Good evening, everyone, and thank you for watching the Barry Beat podcast live from Inside Scoop Studios, 802 Scoop Inside Scoop Studios. I still haven't gotten it right yet. I'm not going to
We're
lie.
just
I'm
in
so
the
sorry.
Inside Scoop
Inside
studio.
Scoop.
Yeah.
With us this evening, of course, we have the ever lovely Raylene. Good evening, Raylene. And
evening.
we are here with our running for Washington Senate, Mr. Mike Doyle. Good evening. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing very well.
Good.
Well, we appreciate you coming into the studios with us and sitting down and just having a conversation with us about, your campaign. Folks that are listening, they want to know about what you believe, what you're going to bring to the table as you're running for state senate. So, I'll just start off and just ask for you to give us some information about yourself.
Well, I am a native-born Montpelierite. I am 76 years old. I spent most of my career out in California, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey. And when my mother died, I returned to Vermont and inherited a guest house in Montpelier, which I've been operating for the last 25 years.
What's the guest house name?
Doyle's Guest House.
Doyle's Guest House. So it's a bread and breakfast? Or
No, we never did do a breakfast. It's basically we have rooms for extended stay occupancies. People, well, travel nurses would be a fine example of
Oh, okay. Yep.
sort of people that we host.
Nice. So obviously a business owner, a small business owner. So tell me, what made you decide to join this crazy ride of running for state office?
Well, I think this is probably the most important election that most of us are going to see probably in quite a while. And this is the one thing that I could do to participate in that in an election of this magnitude. I was called up to fill in for Rob Roper, who was going to be the candidate for this particular office, and Rob, for personal reasons, had to drop out and could not continue his candidacy. So I was called by the Washington County Republican Committee to fill in for him, and in one form or fashion, I've been a reservist all of my life, and this is like being called up to active duty. So I took the job.
Well, it's not the first time you've been called to duty before, because I think you ran in 2016, 18. I can't remember
the date exactly, but yes, I did. Bill Doyle asked me to run in order to complete the Republican side of the ticket.
Yeah.
And I did run in that election. Right in the middle of that election, I had some heart trouble. I had to go to the hospital, and I wasn't very active, but I stayed right until the election day.
Nice. Let's be honest. We're all wondering the question,
Yes.
and I'm assuming you know which question that we're going to ask.
It's one of the frequently asked questions that I deal with often.
Which is,
Am I related to Bill Doyle?
yes, that is the question.
Okay, the easy answer and the honest answer is no. Doyle is a very common name. There are
is.
quite a few Doyles. I understand in the Boston area we have our own telephone book. The other way I like to answer it is that, well, I believe the families, his and mine, were on the same side back at the Battle of Hastings.
Oh, wow.
Long
It was a
time.
I guess so.
little time ago. So that answers that question. We do want to say welcome Clayton and Glenn as well. They're watching. If you guys have any questions that you'd like to ask Mike Doyle, just post it in the comments and we'll make sure to ask them.
Yep. Now, I do have a final note on Bill Doyle. I know or knew Bill very well. For about 20 years, I was his chauffeur, his driver. Bill went to every event.
Yes, he did.
And,
He did.
that he could manage, and I was the fellow that drove the car that brought him there. So I know Bill very well, and there are many people who wondered, for that reason, if we were related, we were always seen together.
That makes sense. I mean, but
And
that's,
kind of cool.
that would be really cool. I mean, Bill was I remember Bill when I first started doing politics. He was super supportive, really nice guy. I mean, he's always been a nice guy, and sharp. That man was sharp. I mean, even as he was getting older and he was having struggles moving around, I mean, you could talk to him and it was like you're talking to, a 40-year-old. It was very impressive. At least that was my experience with him.
Well, of course, Bill Doyle was a state senator. Bill Doyle was also a college professor,
Yep.
and he taught political science. So
He was a smart guy.
Yes, he was.
He was a very smart guy. Vermont lost a really good man a couple weeks ago. So Senate.
Yeah.
That's a hard seat to go for, especially in Washington County. Certainly want to give you wicked credit for that because it takes a lot. We have our current senators, which are Andrew Perchlik, Ann Cummings, and Ann Watson, who they're currently the people that are in office, and I'm sure that you feel that you can do a better job than them. And the question for you, because there's plenty of stuff we could talk about, such as the
sure.
clean heat standard, which I'm sure you're not a big fan of. Do you support the clean heat standard?
no, I do not support the clean heat standard. It is precisely the opposite of what Vermont actually does need to return to some sort of growth and prosperity.
Yeah.
We have a shortage of housing, we have a shortage of labor, we have a shrinking population, which means that taxes, which are already high, are going to become higher as there are fewer people to pay them. And that's all a result of good old progressive orthodoxy and economics. Their scheme seems to be to raise prices, tax more, spend more. A large part of our problem, I think, comes from the fact that for a while Vermont received a number of one-time funds from the federal government, and we spent them all on things that, well, they might have been very good ideas,
And some not so much.
and well, the bottom line is that we spent all of the money and it isn't there anymore. And it seems to me that progressives don't seem to understand that it really is possible to spend all of your money, and when you reach that point, you run out of choices. Now, the three people who are currently incumbents are people who are tax and spend liberal progressive thinkers. I would do something differently. In the first place, if you want to defeat inflation, which is the driver of all of our problems today, really, if you want to defeat inflation, the way to do that is to increase supply. If you increase supply, prices become cheaper. Now, how do you increase or decrease the price of the many, many items that people want and people need and people require every day? The quickest and easiest way to bring down the price of all of those items is by lowering the price of energy, fuel in particular. Everything we use
Ships.
is shipped. And if you can lower that price, all of the other prices will go down and supplies will increase. And we will start to feel a little bit more prosperous if we follow that guideline.
Yeah.
So if you're asking what would be one of the first things I would do if I were in a position to do something, I would lower the price on fuel, not raise it.
That's good. That's because I think there's a lot of, there's a lot, certainly in Barre City, we have a substantial amount of low to moderate income, more probably lower on the lower end. And a good majority of folks in that area also rent, which they don't have any control over the heating equipment that they have. So if they're paying for fuel, they're paying out of their own pockets. And certainly to increase it with the clean heat standard would absolutely have a negative impact on the people that can't afford it the most.
It would definitely be one of the worst things that could possibly happen to Vermonters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elderly, disabled, people,
Especially.
fixed income, yeah, especially.
Do either one of you have a heat
Low-income
pump?
people starting out, people that would like to buy a house.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to buy a house, the interest rates are going to have to come down, and for the interest rates to come down, inflation is going to have to come down, and the way to bring down inflation is to create a surplus, and the quickest and easiest way to bring down inflation is lower the price of energy.
Yeah. So you're a proponent of keeping Yankee open when it was open.
Well, now I'll tell you, one of the things that we might want to look into, every single form of alternative energy comes with its own unique problems.
Right.
There are no perfect forms of energy. And we are now going into third and fourth generation nuclear power plants that when Yankee was built, it was first or second generation. So the technology has improved by quite a bit. In the first place, these devices are a lot smaller, and yet they are a lot more powerful. They are very much safer. And Vermont already is zoned for a nuclear power plant.
I didn't know
Vermont Yankee.
Well,
of
Vermont
course.
Yankee, yes.
Now-
Well, I didn't know if it expired, though.
I read this in today's Wall Street Journal. I didn't have time to thoroughly read the article, but the gist of the article is they are going to reopen 3 Mile Island. 3 Mile Island is going to be reopened. Microsoft is footing the bill. The reason Microsoft needs its own nuclear power plant is because they are developing AI. And AI is the breakthrough technology of our present age. And as I was saying, every technology has its negative aspects. AI requires gobs of energy.
Yeah.
We will not achieve AI. We will not get to the next level where electric cars, for example, become practical, because that requires energy that we just don't have at present. So if Microsoft thinks that reopening 3 Mile Island is a good idea, as I said, a Vermont native, I don't see reopening a brand new, up-to-date, modern Vermont Yankee as being a bad idea. I think that it might just help us bring back industries like IBM. You know, at one time, IBM was the largest employer in the state of Vermont, and those were very good jobs.
Yep.
But IBM, part of the reason IBM left is when the pressure to close Vermont Yankee became so intense that IBM did not feel safe relying on Vermont as a place to continue manufacturing high energy products like, you know, semiconductors. Part of the reason why they left. So
Yeah.
when energy is abundant, growth can occur, and Vermont could use some growth at this point in its history.
Absolutely. Want to say welcome, Shirley. And Glenn
Linda.
Brummer says, huh?
And Linda Kuchar.
And Linda Kuchar, I didn't see her. And Glenn says Bill certainly can afford because he has enough money to do so. You know, and you mentioned AI, and I mean, I can't not talk about it. And Raylene will tell you how much I love AI. I think it's amazing. It's I'm fearful of it for the next generation because they're not going to know how to do anything, because they're going to rely on AI, and then when AI doesn't work, they're not going to have the intelligence to do that, which is, you know, one of the reasons why I'm like totally pro getting rid of any type of cell phones, any type of computers in schools, because we need to focus on the brain first, and then we can focus on, you know, teaching them how to do that other stuff. But the question for you is, you know, and I don't know what you can do as a senator in the state of Vermont about AI, but what are your thoughts about AI? Because it's going to be an issue going forward.
Well,
It's scary.
yes, it is an extension of the same problem we've been worrying about since the invention of the computer.
I know.
Computers, of course, were going to put everybody out of work. Well, it put a lot of people out of work, but also there
Created
are
a
a
lot
lot
of
of
jobs.
jobs
Yep.
that exist today. I'm just looking at this fantastic studio that you have, and back in the day and age, they used to do this kind of thing with vacuum tubes and copper wires
Yeah.
and big Edison, incandescent Edison lights. And all of this that we see before us is what happened as computers developed. Now, my solution set for the problem that you were talking about has to do with education. I think that education is something that could use some readjustment. I'm seeing education in Vermont becoming uncomfortably centralized. Little kids from Roxbury being bused to Montpelier and We're talking about kindergarten children. In the past, Vermont has always been able to educate its children in little villages and in little schools and keep it a community, family friendly kind of affair. This is when you are supposed to take children and teach them how to do mathematics that will continue to work in their head when the batteries are all burned out. This is when you teach them how to read and write and do the sort of things that eighth graders back 80 years ago had a better education than many of our high school graduates do today, and it's beginning to look like they probably had a lot more practical education than many of our college students do today. I would say that what Vermont really needs to do is emphasize smaller schools, private schools, magnet schools, specialized schools, academies, religious schools, and homeschooling, and all of these can use public school assets as a common resource. That's one of the things I would do is I would advocate for, I'm looking for a word, but a magnet school, that type of, a specialized kind of school that parents should be able to understand what their young children are doing for homework. I think when we created fuzzy math, and
I agree.
I have a Master of Science degree, and I could not help my first and second graders with their homework because the directions or whatever they were trying to do confused me. Now, why couldn't I help my children learning the multiplication tables or the state capitals, for example?
Yeah, I mean, it's so. Glenn makes a comment interesting to your proposal on that, and he also says reading, writing, and arithmetic is what we need to focus on. It's
Wholeheartedly.
and I'm sure I saw Raylene smile because we're actually I kind of agree with you. Like I agree with you on that.
No, you don't. You're polar opposite.
I
okay?
am so. So I do believe that small schools are the best, but they're not the most affordable. The way that they're currently set up right now, and I've been a huge proponent of consolidation, which is getting rid of the Roxbury school. So with the, but the smaller schools do cost way more, and I've said, and Raylene, I have said multiple times that our neighborhood schools were what kept our city together in a different way.
That's what I loved.
I loved our
having all
neighborhood
the
schools, but they
neighborhood
were so
schools.
expensive. And now that we have the larger schools, I mean, we might as well just consolidate all the way. I mean, at this point, because
However, I've noticed that the larger schools are unaffordable. You're talking small schools that are very expensive.
Right.
The larger schools with the 14% tax increases and followed by next year's tax increases become unaffordable. And when you can't afford something,
You scale
you've
back.
hit a dead end.
Yeah.
And I don't know why we could afford the small schools and we can't afford the new big schools. I think that maybe we should look into that. Why are the new schools so expensive?
So Act 60 happened in 1996. 1997, right? Somebody, is that correct? Was it
Yeah, I believe
1997?
so, yes.
In 1997, I was in Easton, Pennsylvania. Now, Easton, Pennsylvania is about the size of the greater Burlington area. I was going into my 8th or 9th year on the Easton area school board. We had 17 buildings, 75 buses, a $75 million a year budget. This is in 1999. And, well, for 1 year, I was actually the president of that board. So I do know a thing or two about school finance. And back in those days, I did run fighting higher taxes. I still like to fight higher taxes. And it's difficult because schools need what they need to be functional, but we are going to have to find some economies if we are going to continue to continue along a road that includes consolidation. Now, we have a lot of empty school buildings in Vermont right now. All of our little junior colleges have all emptied out. We have to take the resources that we have got, and we've got to start using those
them.
resources more efficiently. Like the old Vermonters used to say, use it up, wear it out, and make it do. That's always been good advice for our forefathers, and it might still be good advice in this day and age where we're worried about things like AI,
Yeah.
which is a good thing to be worried about. Have you ever seen a movie called The Terminator?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you as far as substance use disorder and what our state is seeing right now as a whole, but in Washington County, definitely here in the city where there's an influx and not a lot of treatment. We have a lot of use and not a lot of help and not a lot of treatment and no real long-term solutions here in the state of Vermont. But we do have long-term right across the border in New Hampshire. And what are your thoughts on that and what we might be able to do here or you might be able to help with?
Well, I'm against substance abuse. Easy enough to say. We are having problems in Vermont that we never had before. We used to live in an Eden far away from the large city and urban problems that people to the south of us have. And now it's all come to Vermont. It's a bus ride or a train ride away. Violence that we have never had, and a type of violence that we've never had in Vermont. We've always had, you know, a chicken thief and getting shot by a jealous lover and that sort of thing. But we've never had the kind of random violence that we have now. On a national level, and that I think is where we start with drugs, especially drugs like fentanyl and the precursor chemicals to make these drugs. We need to come down heavily on international drug trade coming into this country. There are people who are wealthier than tech billionaires, and they are making their money off the slavery and death and abuse that these substances cause. On the user end, we have to help these people as though they are sick. But on the supplier end, we are dealing with some very serious criminals. Criminals at least as dangerous as international terrorists, and they have to be put out of business.
Agree.
Wow.
100% agree.
I,
So tougher on those crimes. I'm
Yes.
assuming you're a proponent for that, that people that are dealing these drugs to our young kids and lacing drugs with fentanyl and other substances that they know are killers. It's cheaper for them to buy, but they know that they're more potent, so they don't have to spend as much money to make a lot more money. But they're knowingly giving these drugs and selling these drugs. It's my opinion they should be charged with murder, premeditated even.
I would not disagree.
But to to be most of the time that doesn't happen here. The penalties are very
That's
lax.
something that, as a senator, I might have a little bit of influence in getting changed, because we are experiencing a kind of crime in Vermont that we've never had before. I understand that there are places you can go in Burlington where even adults feel unsafe walking through the midst of people who are open air drug users and everything else that follows in its path. This is something that needs to be cleaned up. Once again, it has something to do with progressive orthodoxy that is failing in front of our eyes, and it's dragging the rest of us with it. So we need to act against that, and we need to clean the drug problem up. We need more police. We need better police. Oh, and we need to stop this no penalty thing where the police will pick you up, bring you down to the station, and before the arresting officer gets his paperwork done, you're out the door free and easy. Now, I don't know whose idea that was, but it's not a very good idea.
It was the same people that don't want to give less than a 40 for a grade in school because you don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Right. And if they don't at least put their signature on the paper, they do get a 0.
Yeah.
Because that's what that kind of effort earns.
wow. Yeah.
I mean, there have to be consequences for asocial, unsocial, and antisocial activities, or these activities will increase at the expense of
Your average citizen.
civil behavior, earning things, contributing, behaviors that need to be encouraged.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And, Raylene and I have talked about it multiple times where we stand on the drug issue, and she's a little stronger than I am with the, I say involuntary manslaughter. She's like all 100% manslaughter.
Murder.
Murder.
Attempted murder.
Murder.
Yeah, period.
Yeah.
We're talking about two different tiers here.
Yeah.
You've got the victims and
Yep.
the victim
Oh,
class,
yes,
and they're
absolutely.
down here, and that can be handled one way.
That's mental
You've
health
got
issues.
the people who really don't care as long as the money keeps coming
Yep.
and their power keeps growing. Those people, well, what do we need them for?
Yeah. No, that's a very, obviously I support that. And because it's something that I've said multiple times. Very good. Very good. Yeah. So, talking about talking about police, one of the things that has been brought up to, is qualified immunity and folks trying to get rid of qualified immunity, which protects the police officers from being sued if they do something, that's not people. I mean, if they do something that's bad, obviously that's a different story. But, in the process of doing their work, they make a mistake. It's a different situation. And you had mentioned law enforcement and that we need to support them. I suppose you would definitely be against removing qualified immunity.
I would say so. What person in their right mind would wake up every morning and go to work in a job where before the end of the day, his life could be changed very much for the worst, just for doing what he's supposed to be doing, and that's stopping some felon or criminal or that sort of thing. There are such things as bad cops, but most of the cops really do need our protection and encouragement if we are going to make that the kind of career that some of the best people we have will at a young age continue to aspire to a career called protect and serve. Firemen the same way. We sue firemen because they didn't get there in time to save the chimney. You won't have any fire departments. And the same, people continue to defund the police and make it impossible for police to be police. Well, let them protect themselves, and you'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Well, they're seeing what happens in
Oh, yes,
Burlington.
in Burlington, and it's coming here. Barre, Montpelier is kind of a unit. Waterbury, Northfield, we're all sort of together.
Absolutely.
And if it's happening in Burlington, well, it's already started happening here, hasn't it? We've had, just within the last few days, I think we had a serious knifing in Montpelier, and I know you've had shootings here in Barre.
Yeah, we've had certainly some quality of life issues
as well, for
by
sure.
100%. And I will say, Shirley makes the comment, is our judicial system failing our society?
I do believe it is, and that is an area where, as a senator, I might be able to make a difference. We hire prosecutors to prosecute people that are malignancies as far as the rest of our lives are concerned. If they don't do their job, if they, for some reason or another, allow these people to continue to dwell amongst us and make it a crime for us to defend ourselves against them, well, that's a prosecutor that I think might find a really deep gash in his next paycheck. I think a senator can have some influence in these areas.
Yeah. Definitely the prosecutors and attorney generals, state attorneys, all of that is really important, folks. When you're voting, you have to ask yourself, is this person that you're voting for as a state's attorney? I think of Rory, right? He lost that position and he did a really good job. And I'm not saying that the person that took his place, and I can't remember her name, is doing a bad job, but
Well, she's not doing a great job. I'll tell you. I'll say it. I'll say it. I mean, she's not.
Yeah,
and
it's, those positions have substance to them where, we go, people are, talk about, how they feel uncomfortable walking on the streets of Barre. Well, who did you vote for a state's attorney? Who did you vote for your positions that, as you're voting and you're complaining about what things are, this is a perfect example.
Well, sort of. So I thought you were talking about the person that took the job in Burlington, the Attorney General. So he lost
that too.
And she took it.
Correct.
But Michelle Donnelly is the state's attorney here in Washington County. And I don't think as bad of her as I do the other. But,
Right. Well, no, just in general,
but
though.
in general, yes. And It certainly comes down to, but still, they have to follow the letter of the law, no
Right.
matter who they are. And those are the things we need to change: sentencing
Right.
guidelines and
Yeah, when
and
they start making up their own laws, again, supporting their own personal orthodoxy. Yeah, I would say that a reduction in pay is a good way to straighten that out.
Nice.
hit you where it counts.
Yeah, that's right.
And, you know, inflation isn't going to help you if you find yourself in that situation.
True. True. So I'll ask the real difficult question that will probably get you into trouble, because it gets everybody into trouble when you ask it.
Well, I have been there before.
Your thoughts on the voucher program,
Okay, voucher program.
the homeless
Bring me
voucher?
a little up. Okay, homelessness is
Correct.
Is a yeah, that's a problem. You know, it's a big problem. I don't know if I saw this on the internet, and of course, if you see it on the internet, it's got to be true, right?
Right, of course.
That Vermont has got something like the second
Yep.
biggest homeless problem in the country, and we have the second least populous state. We need to do something to help people that find themselves in that situation. However, we also need to solve that situation because it is not a desirable situation. In one form or fashion throughout all the years, well, we've always had people who live on the margins. I remember once upon a time they were called hobos. And we had a hobo camp outside of Montpelier. I'm going back to the 1950s. Nobody was living in it at the time. Now, of course, they've gone to homeless, and then after homeless, they've become unhoused and all of that. But we had some things back then that worked fairly well, and if you are caught in that life, would but for fortune and God go you or I, it could happen to either or any of us. For the people that want to get out of it, there should be ways that they can work and earn their way out of it. One of these is affordable places to live. Now, you know, if you ever go to Europe, and I think we have the same thing in the United States, I'm not sure, you can stay overnight in hostels, for example, for about $10. Now, you know, a lot of people can earn $10 doing a lot of different things, especially if these are people who are motivated to get out of a lifestyle that is really a very depressing kind of lifestyle to be in. YMCAs were a pretty good example of where a person could go, and for a very low rate, he could afford to live there. It was a dormitory style living, and yet he could. Well, the people who work in these shops on Main Street ought to be able to afford to live within walking distance of where they're working. And by having low rent places that they can afford on what their salaries are, a lot of them could get out of a homeless situation. Then there are the group of people that need more help than that. People with mental illness, people with drug problems. That, of course, is a problem for Vermont's mental health community, and somehow we do have to support the efforts of those people. Beyond that, we have people who are actually criminals. they are living this lifestyle because, well, they don't seem to thrive in any other lifestyle, and that is a problem for Vermont's correctional department. That's how you house that community. Finally, at the very end of this spectrum, you have genuinely, honest to goodness, fair-isle people whose idea of the American dream is to lead a free and basically irresponsible life. Well, that's not against the law, and it's not necessarily the worst idea I've heard. Let these people live as they can and as they will.
Well, right now, Vermont spends a whole lot of money on
Way too much.
on the voucher program, the temporary housing for hotels. Much of we have a lot of transients from all over the United States come here to stay because they know they can get services, and that has definitely taxed us a lot.
A lot.
And so then there's not a whole lot of money left over for assistance to mental health patients or our very own that we have struggled for years already to help.
You do.
So what do we, how do you see us handling the problem that we have with transients?
You do run out of money at a certain point, and when you run out of money, you run out of choices. One thing that we need to take a careful look at, we need to sharpen the pencil. I don't understand how some of these homeless people can live in hotels that I myself could not necessarily afford to live in for 6 months. Where does that money come from? The other thing is, I was talking about basically single room dormitory kind of occupancy places that $10 a night would be the rent. We have regulations that probably say you really are not allowed to do that. Well, now maybe we can't afford those regulations. I know they were all put in with the best of intentions, but you know, part of the reason why we don't have a surplus of housing is back in the 1980s, I believe, the legislature thought it would be a wonderful idea if all new housing construction put in fire suppression systems, sprinkler systems. It only adds another $25,000 to the price of a new house, and it was too much money for too many people, and that's why those houses were never built in the first place. So we have to sharpen the pencil on what we are allotting to these people. We have to cut out some regulations that are actually inhibiting the growth that we need to prosper. And you had one other point that I kind of forgotten. I think
Maybe I'm not sure, the transients, maybe we haven't talked.
Transients, yes.
Yep.
Let's talk about transients for a second. Once again, I think I saw this recently on the internet. Most of the homeless people that we have are actually Vermonters or people that have strong connections to Vermont. Now, that's an idea that one, I would like a little more information on it, and a little more fact-checking. I think anybody who would come to Vermont for the free and easy living up here in the snow probably does need to be included in the mental health community.
Well, we provide them a hotel in the winter time
Yes,
here
we
in
do.
Vermont, so they don't have to be concerned. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do it at all. I know that we need to help people, and I know that we do have resources and to help. But we wouldn't run out of money for our own our own. If we didn't have more and more people coming in, we would have money for mental health service, and we would have money to aid,
Yes.
our neighbors who maybe were flooded out of their homes or lost their jobs due to
If we are a
illness or
little
anything.
more careful allocating the use of the money we have, we would be better off. I have a feeling that, I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I think probably a very large number of our legislatures are having the problem we discussed a little earlier about, well, what do you do when the battery runs out and the calculator doesn't work anymore, and they never learned how to do math with a pencil
With
and
a
an
pencil,
eraser.
right? And they may have gotten
They
to
may
eat
have.
everything with a golden spoon before in their life or
A
something. I
very,
don't know.
a very utopian way of looking at the world, and people with utopian ways of looking at the world are good at writing science fiction books, but they're not good at balancing ledgers
And it's
other
just,
books.
it's my opinion that where we're at now, it's a shame because there are people that really could use a hand up. They just need help. They're working, they're working families, they're working single moms or dads, and they're people that just need a little help. But
If
there
they're-
doesn't seem to be help as much for them.
Right.
There doesn't.
It's all been regulated out of existence. You cannot find a legal single room apartment in a building that isn't fully sprinklered and has an elevator because, handicapped accessibility. This is where things are getting too expensive, and when things get too expensive, it does divide people into those who can afford things and those who never will be able to. And
that's shameful.
in America, that's not a desirable situation. A big part of the American dream is that if you play for the team, sooner or later you'll get your at-bats, and when you do, you're either going to strike out or you're going to hit a home run. And I think that's in the Constitution.
It's interesting that you mentioned the elevators and everything else, and I think of our minimum housing standards that we have, both in Barre City and in the state in general. And when you talk to politicians, they're like, oh well, the housing market, or any affordable housing should have, like, and I'm being hyperbolic, but
it's true.
they should have marble countertops, and it should be all beautiful and everything and modernized and everything else. And my
Ask them if
comment,
they want to invest in your condominium complex.
right,
exactly,
and
that nobody can
that's
afford to live in.
correct. And I've made the comment
Give me
before
your
that,
money and
there's
go away.
right. There's a market and a need for what I refer to as crappy housing.
Yeah.
And I know that some people are going, well,
Starter,
but you know
my
what?
first
Let me
apartment
just tell
was
you,
not a
a
palace.
crappy house is better than living underneath a bridge.
Absolutely.
And if you would rather somebody live under a bridge than have a crappy house, I don't know what to tell you. But it's something that, is, I mean,
I agree with you. I mean, my first, second apartment were terrible. My first home I ever bought was, my mother cried when we bought our house. I mean, she went in there and she thought we were crazy, but it's what we could do.
Could afford it.
And we were young, and I was 20 years old, and but it's what we could do. But then there was a lot more help for people like me and my husband, who we had 2 small kids already, and we were just starting out. There was a lot more help for people that were still, we worked, we had full-time jobs and everything. We just couldn't do everything, but that didn't mean that we should go without. And I just think that it's a shame that we really, the people that are trying the hardest to really work on themselves are the people that we're leaving behind.
Those are the ones that we should be aiming at helping. remove the regulations, make it easier for people to get a job, take the barriers and restrictions and things that inhibit people from even trying. If you get rid of that, I think you'll find that about a good 70% of the homeless population would be in a position to take care of themselves, and they'd be better people for doing it that way.
Great.
They would be contributors to
Yeah.
our society.
Very good. Well, it's already 7:56 p.m. We're pushing an hour already. Want to give you an opportunity. Is there something that we haven't touched on that you want to speak?
That's been bothering me right from the beginning. Could you tell me about the squirrels?
Oh, geez.
So the squirrels
Go ahead,
are kind
Michael.
of the mascot of Barre Beat. I don't know. One of them, I'm not sure the name of one of them, but the one on the left that you can't see is covered up by Raylene's little
On
thing
your
there.
left, our right. Yes.
Correct. Can you hold up Nutters?
Nutters.
This
of
is
course.
That one's
Nutters.
Nutters. Yeah, he's the
He's the mascot.
he's the mascot of the Barry Beat podcast. In fact, I'm gonna go right ahead and say he's probably the mascot of 802 Scoop in general, because I mean the Four Quarters has him on there.
Yes,
and
they like to have nutters on
we
too.
have-
They give him a little football helmet.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
gonna go and say that's our mascot.
Okay, so this is Nutters, and who's this? Shucks?
This is his sister or his brother or something.
We're not
Yeah.
really sure.
We don't know.
We don't know what the name is.
You can name it if you want.
I think shucks. That's the one that Michael. You said that's the one that Michael gave me.
Yes.
Yeah. So who will be your Michael Deering, who's running for Senate as well.
As well.
Yeah. So that's the deal with the squirrels. They're just we had them a long time ago, and yeah,
And now they are famous television
They're-
personalities.
They
famous
are. Yeah, they're
television
personalities.
personalities.
Very good.
And thankfully, they have a lot less to say than
They
I
used
do.
to. Oh.
Well, it's been very nice talking with you. You are a very skilled and talented interlocutor and interviewer.
Well, thank you.
Nice.
They say that flattery works. And,
It
Well,
does.
you know,
It does.
sometimes. Yeah.
Well, Mike, I want to give you an opportunity. We like to give our candidates that are coming on the Barry Beat. One, we do want to say thank you so very much for coming on. We understand some people, it's a trek come out here. It's always late at night. But I want to give you an opportunity to, say, your final pitch of why should people vote for Mike Doyle. And I'll let you go for it. I mean, it's putting you on the spot there.
well, it is, yes. And why should people vote for me? Well, I think for one thing, I could do a job that would be better for the state of Vermont than the present people I'm running against. It's not a tall bar to hop. I think I could bring an element of common sense and old wisdom that seems to have eluded our current legislature. I would help to break up a supermajority of people who the most common complaint I've heard when I'm out on the street talking with people is that you go to the legislature and your representatives don't even listen to you anymore. They are working on a program all together. They've got a supermajority as a team. They are going to put these laws, they are going to enact these laws, and what you want or what your concerns are or what you think about doesn't concern them. And that's a terrible thing for a representative of the people in a democracy to feel. So if we can improve the quality of the population in the legislature, that would be something that I think people would want to vote for someone like me. I have an opinion that's different than that of the supermajority.
All right. Well, that was pretty good.
Different.
Yes.
It's a good thing.
Different is a good thing. Thank you so very much for joining us here
I'm
tonight.
glad you agree. And all of you folks out in podcast land, I hope you're all Republican.
Or independent that wants to vote Republican.
Right.
Very good.
Or Democrat that's just tired of,
yeah.
Well, you
of
know,
voting
I don't know
Democrat.
That's
if you saw that movie Reagan. It's playing in the,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
playing
I
in
saw
the
it. It
theaters
was
now.
great.
You saw it. He's just been shot. He's under anesthesia. He's coming out of anesthesia, surrounded by doctors, masks, gowns, bright lights. His eyes are blinking, and he's looking at all of these people in gowns surrounding him, and he says, "I hope all of you are Republicans." Well, that's kind of the way I'm feeling at exactly this moment.
I love Reagan. The movie Reagan is a really good one, folks, and I would highly recommend going out and watching it. Dennis Quaid did a great job portraying Ronald Reagan, who was
Nice.
And Ronald Reagan was a great president.
he was probably number 2 in the 20th century.
I would agree.
Who's your first pick?
Well, my first pick, it kind of hurts me to say this, but the truth is Roosevelt.
Roosevelt. Oh, that hurts me too.
Well, he's big socialist and all of that, but a steady hand on the wheel when this country needed it at that time in our history.
Okay. Well, that's an interesting take. We'll have to.
They put him on a dime.
Yeah, they should have put Calvin Coolidge on a dime.
Well, maybe, but I don't think Calvin Coolidge has his own panache, but he's pretty much a Vermont phenomenon.
Yeah.
They asked a story about Calvin Coolidge. There was a comedian back in those days, Will Rogers, I think was the name of the comedian. The report came down that Calvin Coolidge had died, and they asked Will Rogers what he thought about that. And what do you think? Calvin Coolidge is dead. Will Rogers said, "Well, how can they tell?"
On that, I want to say thank you, everyone, for watching the Barry Beat podcast live from Inside Scoop Studios. Have a great evening, and we'll catch you next week, and we'll have Miss Carol Dawes on. So we'll see you next week.
Sounds good. And we'll see you on Thursday.
Yes, this is true.
Very good.